Welcome to Impact Masters Podcast in collaboration with Africa's Talking Retold Podcast, where every conversation sparks new insights. Join us as we delve into the stories of extraordinary individuals who are shaping our world. Movers and shakers in tech, policymakers, entrepreneurs, entertainers, and all those whose stories are worth telling. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and transformed. Welcome, and let's embark on this journey of discovery together. Impact Masters Podcast. You can check us out on all social media platforms. You can also find us across all podcast channels. Simply search for Impact Masters, then subscribe, follow, and share. www.impactmasters.io. Here's your host, Michael Kamathi.
How I got into Zambia.
Yes.
All right.
We talked about Botswana, Zimbabwe, but we never got to Zambia.
How I got to Zambia.
Yes.
So I
because that's now your biz, right?
Yeah. So I always wanted to do mining engineering and civil engineering, and it was a very simple idea. The idea was I want to always have a job.
Okay.
I don't want to be unemployed at any stage in my life.
Yeah.
And if Africa has got all these people, we're gonna need roads.
Yeah.
So tick. I'll always have a road. There'll always be a need for road and housing. So if I'm a civil engineer, then I just watched a blast and I was like, yo, that is cool. I was like,
what is a blast?
Like where you put explosives or detonator dynamite. And then you press the button and everything was poof. And I saw one of those and I was like,
is that how you begin mining, or
who is that guy? Who pressed that button? And they were like, no, we're a mining engineer. And I said, I want to do
this
civil.
After high school? Or?
This is at high school. I was like, I want to do civil engineering and mining engineering.
Okay.
So that's what was I was like, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So I got to university and through university, I then was in class with some people who were already mining engineers.
Yes.
And they were like, apply. I was like, but I'm in the UK. Maybe I first go to like Australia or somewhere before I come back.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was always in Africa I was going to be. But they gave me an offer. They gave me an opportunity. And I was like,
These are your fellow students, or?
These were fellow students, but they were more mature students. They were working and then they came to do the degree.
Yeah, but though you have put it very correctly, because even last time I checked, the UK university recruitment was more driven by the companies that are already doing mining. For some reason, I don't know why they don't teach these things early. And then they are sponsoring your education, and then you'll come and get a job maybe for some years. You decide to move, you move. Maybe you can delve into why that's the case. You can't just, go directly to it like you did. Not most people actually would do that.
Yeah.
As you continue with your story, not that as you continue.
So at the end of the day, what happened was I then ended up coming into, they were like, we've got this operation in Zambia.
Yeah.
I was like, Zambia? I'd never been to Zambia, but I was like, no problem, let's go.
Okay.
Because I'm one for adventure, just like we're going to be on the borders later on tonight.
Oh, nice.
So what...
You have the right people on board. Yeah.
But how I ended up was because it was a young company. It was a company that was growing very fast.
Okay.
And it seemed like a really good challenge.
Yeah.
Give me the opportunity to do different things. And I was like, let's go. So I just got my stuff packed. I did my interviews, didn't even go to where I was going to be. And mining is a place that is remote.
Yeah.
So the remote world is one that does not have a lot of things.
Yeah.
So we land on the runway and we driving and you're seeing and you're looking around and it's like, so these people are selling underwear on the side of the road. And I'm like, I don't know what I really got myself into, but I've signed up for this.
Yeah.
And this mine is about 7,500 people on the mine site, 7,500 to 10,000 people.
Yeah.
It's a big operation, and it's the biggest copper mine in Africa.
Yeah.
or was at that time.
Yeah.
And that was, and I start seeing what the mining industry looks like.
The reality. Yeah.
And so I'm like, my eyes open wide. I'm like, oh, so is this what generation of copper looks like?
Yeah.
You need 7,500 people. You're moving 40 million cubic meters of dirt, and you're producing 250,000 tons of copper as a final product, because there's a smelter as well. And so you're looking at this massive machine, and they're individuals. And the thing is, when I say a massive machine, one tire on a truck is about 3 meters tall.
Okay.
So one tire, you stand next to it, the door is 2 meters, so it's
Is
a
there a
meter
reason
long.
for that?
Because you have to carry your weights, large weights. So in order to be able to carry large weights, you need big trucks.
Yeah.
And so the bigger the truck, the bigger the tires, so you can disperse the pressure.
Okay.
And so that truck, any of those trucks can carry between 100 tons to 350 tons.
Okay.
Now, these numbers are very abstract, so I have to actually think about how best to illustrate this point. I can't. It's just a monumental. It's a huge. So maybe if I do this, 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. So if I had a block that is 1 meter, 1 meter by 1 meter, right? That block would weigh approximately, let's say, 2 tons. Right. So one block like that would weigh 2 tons.
Yeah.
So to get 100 of those blocks, so 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter times 100 is what sits on the back of a truck.
Okay.
So that is a huge truck.
Yeah.
But that's the smallest of the big trucks.
Okay.
You get up to 350, 380. So it's 380 1 meter by 1 meter blocks that sit there. And they are transported. And every day, 24-hour operation. And you put in, and we was consuming.
This has not been processed yet.
No. It is.
There is a whole industry that is, or machinery that is processing this into now pure copper.
So on the mine itself, and I'll start from the beginning, is that you have to drill a hole. Drill a bunch of different holes so that you can understand where the copper sits. And so once you've got an understanding where the copper sits, you then have to extrapolate using a lot of maths to say, okay, I've picked up copper here, picked up copper here. Between these two holes, this is the amount of copper that exists from point A to point B. And it's sitting in a 3D space on an XYZ continuation. So it continues, and it might flip, it might twist, it might turn, but it continues. And you use science and geology to interpret what it might do between the 2 points.
Okay.
And so we now have an idea what's in the ground.
Yeah.
You can't see it, but you got an idea through modeling.
Yeah.
Now that you've got that, you then now go and drill holes in a very, very tight spacing or gaps between the holes.
Yeah.
And then you put explosives.
Dynamites.
It's not dynamite, but it's
Explosive.
dynamite.
Okay, let's go with explosives.
Let's go with dynamite. So you put a whole bunch of those there.
Yeah.
Then you join them together and you stand far away. Then you press a button, poof, and the whole thing goes off.
So the mining engineer is the one who presses the button. Why?
No, because it's not child's play. These are real. These are proper. These are things, man. These are the same things that damage can be caused. 9/11 stuff. Type activities.
Okay, this is a bit controversial, but you can set up the things that can blow the world by pressing the button.
No, but okay. So the reason why.
Side note.
So the reason why it's important for the guy pressing the button to be an expert is because there are a lot of things that could happen at any moment in time. So you could have errors in the block that result in some of the block going off and some of the block not, and then you create a more dangerous environment because now you don't know what has been exploded and what has not exploded. Even more so, some people might not have heard that there's an explosion that's going to go off.
Okay.
And so then you need to make sure
security
and everything. So there's a process that has to go around, safety around that ensures that the right person needs to be the one pressing the button. So that is the actual reason.
That is funny when I think about it, because if it's pressed by anyone, maybe someone will say, you guys have been pressing it for a long time. Then you kill other people.
Then you kill people. And then you'll be like, how hard could... that was a bad idea.
Now
I shouldn't have done that.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So once you've done that, you've blown it up. Now it's in blocks and like a meter. So it's slabs, right? Yeah. And then you put them in the back of a truck. That truck then has to go and put it into a process plant where it moves from, let's say, 800 to much, much smaller, to dust. And you put chemicals and you mix it and you grind it, you add water. And the whole process now is because copper doesn't just exist as like a copper bar in the ground.
Yeah.
It will exist in different forms, but it is usually combined with other elements. So the key now within the processing part is to remove or separate those elements from the copper so that you can have up to 90, 95, 99% copper. So you'll be putting chemicals, you'll be putting water, you'll be washing, you'll be doing all sorts of different things so that at the end you've got yourself
with copper.
Copper.
But let me ask, is there a byproduct of this process?
Yes.
What is that?
Sulfuric acid is one example of a byproduct.
In this mining, you'll end up also with sulfuric acid.
Yes.
What else?
Waste. You have a lot of waste.
Okay.
So you have a lot of waste. Another very beneficial byproduct is gold.
In the process you might get gold.
In the process you might get gold as well. So gold is usually found with copper.
Okay. Yeah, because copper similarly looks like refined.
Refined.
Is okay? The gold.
The gold is the shiny one.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you do get a lot of byproducts, and those byproducts for the most efficient businesses, you look to either get as much of the gold as possible. You look to then use the sulfuric acid as best as possible for other downstream applications, and so you move on. And the thing about people is that, and me being a graduate, you come into a space and you think you know, but the reality is that the actual work of doing work is when you get to learn and you get to know.
The real experience. Yeah.
So being on the ground is something that is most cardinal to one's growth, learning, experience. And at the end of the day, for me, I felt that if I had that experience before actually going to do a degree, as an example, I would have equipped myself with so much. I would have gotten more probably out of my education than if I had just said, you know what, let me go finish school, then come in.
Yeah.
The idea of giving yourself that exposure to an environment, to a context, opens your mind out.
Yeah.
Because the reality of what you learn in a classroom is going to be very different to the reality of what happens on the ground.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
No, so for me, one of the things was I get to this space and I have to stick out as an individual out of 7,500 people. And I don't think I'm a guy who likes attention, but I also don't want to be sidelined.
Okay.
So we then look at different things and identify that this mine is not really using data. It's generating tons and tons of data. So every single truck, and at that point, we had about 56 trucks.
Yeah.
So 56 trucks are constantly generating data.
Yeah.
They'll generate the data because it moved from point A to point B, how long it took, and every point is measured in seconds.
Yeah.
And so every second for this equipment is being measured and what they're doing, how they're doing it, and all that. At the same time, you've got sensors that are sitting on the trucks, and those sensors are always sending data. And that data is pulsating. It's just pulsing. And it's just being stored in a time series database continuously.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you're generating so much information. Then you say thank you and you park it. And the easiest example for me to translate this is when you walk into some buildings, they ask you, please fill the form. Sign here and put your name and your phone number. And then they put the book in their pocket.
Yeah.
What's that for?
What was the point?
What's the point?
Yeah.
And so, for me, a large portion of what the mine as a business was doing what the security guard does. Collects the information, puts it to the side.
Don't do anything with it.
Yeah. But a business has to make decisions. And a lot of the decisions were being made, when I was in 1943, last time I saw this is what you should do. And the thing is, when you've got so many pieces of equipment, it's maintenance.
Yeah.
It's procurement.
Yeah.
It is efficiencies. It is safety.
Yeah.
And so all of these things are traces of information, hints to how you could do it better, but you park it and you put it to the side. And for no large costs.
Yeah.
But just ambition and vision.
Yeah.
One should and can actually unlock and unleash a world that you never knew. And so when we then started was, I'm going to try and make a name for myself. We're going to start generating reports.
Yeah.
So you start with, and it's a mining engineer doing this type of stuff.
Yeah.
So we had Excel. And we go, how can we make this work? Then you go, there's VBA. So you now start coding VBA code script and you put the password in cell A. And then you put the mailing list with the names and you automate and you have a desktop and that desktop runs and it automates reports and these reports are giving information to people.
Yeah.
And now suddenly people are getting a whole lot of information. But then the next problem exists. With information, you need to then do something with it.
Act on it. Yeah.
And that's the worst part of it all. People were always either skeptical of the information
resistance to change.
Or the information itself had gaps. So the quality of the data wasn't necessarily there because you weren't generating data with the view of making a decision. You're just generating data as a requirement. As a requirement, correct. And it sits there and but at the end of the day, when you start looking through it, you then go, but this doesn't make sense. This does not reflect the reality. And now if I'm making a decision, it's something that does not reflect reality. I'm making a bad decision. So you now need to fix the process to allow for data to be captured correctly, for data to flow correctly so that the report carries meaning and is correct and it's got good quality. But at the end of the day, you then now need to change the mindset of individuals so that you can act on those decisions. And a large portion of the resistance comes because people don't understand. They don't understand what they're looking at. They don't understand how did you get to that point. They look at it as though it is some departure from the reality of what you're doing right now. And so at the end, what we then had to do was upskill a lot of people. But you then have to create an environment where somebody doesn't feel like the change is a lot. So that the change that exists might be progressive over time. And therefore the person's able to adapt to the change. Or you just rip out what they used to have and give them something new. And you say, from going forward, this will make your life easier, but you don't have this option anymore. And you have a whole lot of problems, heartache, the rest of it. But what happened over the 8 years was the entire business transformed the way it ran. The reports became the basis of the start of a conversation.
Yeah.
So my metrics look like this. This metric is bad because the trend is wrong. And why? And if I'm going to make this long-term strategic decision, what does the 3 years afterwards look like? And how then do I then incorporate the cost benefit into that discussion? And so you now suddenly start to have people who, the mining industry is a very traditional space.
Yeah.
You then start having very traditional people looking at information and learning how to work in a way that is acclimatized for the modern world and the modern technologies and opportunities that exist.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is it's a far separation for a lot of businesses at a relatively low entry point. And I talk about it. I'm a mining engineer. I don't know anything about VBA, or I didn't.
Yeah.
But
out of that curiosity, actually, you had to learn.
I have to learn.
Yeah.
And there's a portion of it that had curiosity, but there was also a portion that was about survival.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to stand out amongst a whole bunch of people. So I had
People have
to...
been doing this for over 40 years plus.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to convince them.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they're not shy. They'll tell you to shove it where it should be shoved because you are as old as he's been working. And so you're like, who are you to tell me all this? You're useless.
It's been working, still working.
Exactly.
That's why you're here.
That's why you're here, yeah. So these are the same things that took you to school. And I'll be like, but this is all unnecessary violence on a Monday. I'm just trying to get to the same outcome that you are. And that also then falls into the softer skills, is how you talk to people, how you work with people, how you then gain the perspective of another individual so that when you present to them, when you talk to them, when you approach them with a solution, you're approaching them from the context that they live in. They live in a world where the struggle of getting it right and doing something comes with a fear of being replaced. And so you have to have a little bit of empathy, understanding, but at the same time, you have to know what their problem is so that you can actually solve it. And if they're solving somebody's problem, then you're more likely to get that change. And so 8 years and really just running different types of programs, different types of implementations of technology, analytics. And so then we started to get now into a space where we're looking at how do we leverage data science and machine learning and the rest of it. And so I was like, I know our mind, but we're going to hire a data scientist. And they're like, what's a data scientist? He's a guy who's really smart, does statistics, and at the end of the day, you won't understand.
He has to be smart first before anything else.
And at the end of the day, you won't understand the thing he says. But
he gets the job done.
Get your job done. And so we interview a whole bunch of people, and I'm like, so I'm going to be having a data scientist alongside the developers, alongside my engineers. I'm going to have to actually level up. Because otherwise I'm going to look like the fool trying to no, you're wrong. So that's when I put my hand up and I said, I believe the space that we need to go to is within technology. I need to upskill myself. And so I put a value proposition in front of the company, and I was able to do the CTO, the Chief Transformation Officer program out of the University of Berkeley. And I said to them, I'm not here to try to be good. I want to be sitting with the best. And so I want to look at one of the most leading universities out there around this. And so I get there and we do a whole bunch of courses over a course of a year and a half. And it was...
Was that in person or online?
So we had 1 week, 2 weeks in person, 2 weeks in person.
Okay.
But the rest of it was online.
Yeah.
But you do assignments together, you do engagements in WhatsApp, you had groups and clusters that you did work with. And so you get to know a lot of the people within the team. And you had directors from Snowflake, you had the guy who's in charge of Europe for Azure, and you had a whole bunch of people redoing the entire healthcare back-end services, and a suite of different people. You get Pinterest CTO come, we had the Uber CTO come as well. So you get to talk to a lot of different people, and you get this experience that is like, okay, this is impressive because these are the things I read about and see on TV. But the reality became, or what I felt was that the peers that I had were the real MVPs because they had these experiences and I spent so much time. But the gap between what I'm trying to do and what they're doing is not necessarily miles apart. I'm sitting in a room. And like I said, I like to stand out. I don't like attention, but I like to stand out. So any opportunity I get, my hands up, and I'm talking, and and so then people are like, this guy in mining is not even he's not an IT person. He's just a guy who looks to solve problems. But I am trying to drive a lot of the conversations that we're having and really trying to challenge thinking that other people have.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we then also have discussions around the metaverse, Web3. And the room is actually an older room. So I'm the youngest in the room.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people are sitting 45 plus years.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, dude, the metaverse, sign me out, because I don't understand this stuff.
Yeah.
Because my brain has to translate. It has to go like this in the reality of the world, and then it translates into a digital space.
Yeah.
And so what is the metaverse? Why does it carry so much? I don't really understand, but I know the next thing, but why
is it important?
Why is it important? I can't. And the reality, in my view, they then looked at me. I'm like, guys, I'm not that young.
Yeah.
So I also don't really understand. But the reality of that was the need for a multi-generational learning experience. And that I can learn from somebody who's 20. Because the person who's 20, in 10 years will be 30 and will be a client of mine.
Yeah.
And if I'm trying to hit a boxer where he stands in this moment, I will miss him, because I should be hitting a boxer in the moment that he will be in.
Yes.
And so I'll use this analogy. So Japan. Japan, way back, a company within Japan wanted to introduce coffee.
Okay.
The Japanese, they came, they marketed, they tried everything. Japanese weren't interested. They have a very strong tea culture. And they said, no thank you to this. The company then says, you know what? Let's change our approach. Let's make sweets. Let's make chocolates.
Yeah.
But we'll make chocolates with coffee flavor.
Yes.
And these sweets became a hit amongst the youth.
Okay.
And so the youth started to develop the palate for coffee. Because the older people didn't have that palate. They were like, this is bitter. But the youth at a younger age could develop those. So they developed that palate. And now the Japanese coffee industry is valued at $1.2 billion.
Okay.
15 years later.
Okay.
And so the idea is that if we are looking at today's problems and we're solving today's problems with today's technologies and today's mindset and today's thinking, we're not doing anything for our future.
Absolutely.
We should be thinking, what does 2050 look like?
Yes.
And how do I then create something that will get me hitting the problems of 2050? Not I get to 2050 now, I'm like, there's this problem now.
Be too late.
It'll be too late, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the thinking about the vision, about the patience, the longevity, those are the things now that when I listened to, when we're sitting in California, and it's like the metaverse, and we're looking around in the room, and we're like, all the people who are coming up are old, all the people who are in the room are old, and they're like, this is not progressive. This is not trying to hit the future where it is. We need to have younger people participating in everything that we do.
Yes.
Whether it's policy making, whether it is businesses, whether it is government, whatever it is, younger people should be sitting at those tables and they should be giving their perspectives with no shame, but they should be encouraged to participate. Because if we don't, we will be making dinosaurs. Dinosaurs will be making dinosaurs. That's it. And so that's how I view it. And that was my experience within Berkeley that then brought me back. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on this digital journey and really trying to restructure the way that we gather information, clean information, and have a pipeline that becomes more sustainable as the business. Because these are mining engineers who were doing IT stuff. It did not look pretty. And then mining engineers that blow things up, it was just not good. So we then started restructuring and trying to move also to the cloud, trying to leverage data lakes and Azure services. And we chose our tech stack to be Microsoft. And really just trying to push barriers within that. And within that journey, you then realize that the world has a lot more to offer. And if you don't start utilizing some of these tools, you become obsolete. So
as a transformation leader, there are two main goals that you have. That is positive impact and sustainable change.
Correct.